Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So in this video I'd like to show you guys how to solo tank within Tower of the Mad Mage. With Tower of the Mad Mage still dropping those Lionheart weapons, which are still very viable, especially for tanks, and thus there is still a whole lot of relevance to be running the Trial. Now when you run the Trial, ideally you would run with a solo tank, because then you can run with more DPS and basically get through the phases faster and basically have a quicker and more successful run. And thus you need a solo tank which knows what he's doing and won't end up just dying again and again and ending up completely dead. Well, with mod 19 there came a whole load of changes to the Paladin healers and the healers in general. However, it's really not something we have to worry about. The Paladins, they can still pretty much shield us for the same amount as they could before in mod 18, and the other healers even have a whole lot easier time to heal just one target, with all of them having insanely high magnitudes on their single target heals. So let's jump straight into things, and I'm just gonna run you through the run of me solo tanking on my Paladin. So we start things off, and the current build I'm using is a build which is kind of a hybrid build of basically dealing as much damage and thus having as much aggro as possible, and also having a decent amount of HP. So I'm running with just over 1,000,000 HP there at 1,017,000. Now you can see I really don't have any problems holding the aggro, especially from this group, as they don't exactly have the best DPS around, but it's to get by. And the reason why I'm showing you this in particular is, yes, when you don't run with a group with lots of DPS, it can be a whole lot harder to solo tank. The reason being, the phases will last longer, you'll accumulate more of those Annihilate stacks, and these big Annihilate balls will basically deal a whole lot more damage. You can see that one there draining pretty much all of my HP. I'm switching over to Binding Oath there instead of my Relentless Avenger, just so I can gain that stamina a whole lot quicker. I'm continually using my At Will, the Oath Strike there, to maintain the aggro. And whenever I do lose the aggro, I would use the Smite to make sure I gain it back instantly. At this point I've also switched out to my Absolution instead of Sacred Weapon for that extra survivability. When we go later into the phase, we keep accumulating more and more of those Annihilate stacks. You can see the top left there, and Absolution will help basically mitigate the damage by about 20%. In fact, it will only be about 10% or a bit less, but that's beside the point. I also have slotted in my daily powers, Divine Judgment. You saw me use it at the very beginning, that was just for aggro. And then I also have slotted there my Heroism for my extra HP, which I'm using now along with Absolution and the tab, just to get that maximum basically survivability. And we survived that hit there from the Annihilate, and we're currently at 5 stacks, which is not too much of a big deal. You also may have noticed there we did switch out our At-Will power. I switched back over to Shielding Strike just so I can gain that stamina a whole lot quicker, because the more of those Annihilate stacks you have, the more damage his Arcane Blasts will deal. Basically, they'll deal about 100k at 0 stacks and deal plus 100k per stack, basically. So when you're at about 10 stacks, he's dealing nearly over 1,000,000 base damage to you per hit, which can be pretty nasty. We took that ball there fairly easily. Here's a fireball. I go to take it, however the Paladin healer decides he'll take it anyway. Then we have the Superstorm, and yeah, just going around to make sure I'm giving combat advantage, and yeah, just overall holding that aggro. And here comes the next Annihilate using my Heroism. Unfortunately, I don't think I have my Absolution up, but we tank that just fine. We spread, we move away. You ideally don't want to take that unnecessary damage, although I believe I did get hit there. But the healers are pretty decent and can easily manage to heal me up. Here comes another Annihilate. This time we're at a total of 8 stacks, and that gives us the 9th stack. And you can see we can tank these fairly fine. We tanked that one without the Absolution, which I should have got off. Luckily we don't have a charge here, perfectly fine. And we're looking on possibly getting a 10th stack here. Yup, here we go. Let's proc everything. Heroism, Absolution, Artifact and Tab with Divine Champion, and we tank that no bother. And that's it. That's phase 1. And that's phase 1, getting 10 stacks. The lower amount of DPS, the more stacks you'll obtain. Generally, you won't obtain more than 10 stacks with a decent group. If you have a really good group, you could only gain like 5 stacks, and that's like the dream for a tank, because you really don't have to worry then. And that's basically it. If you're on a different tank, basically if you're on like a fighter or a barbarian, I don't know how well barbarians are going to do solo tanking this with holding aggro, but if you are, you'll basically have to use those same powers that will give you as much survivability as possible, so you can keep taking those massive hits. So now let's move on to phase 3. Now this is with a different group, as that group there where I got to phase 2 and beyond with getting those 10 stacks, we did not actually succeed. So with this group now we're proceeding on. I jump through into phase 3. Phase 3 is relatively easy for us tanks, as we just take a ball every now and again, and those stacks have enough time to expire. They last 45 seconds, and if you receive another stack before the 45 seconds are over, then they just reset the cooldown, and all the stacks will last for another 45 seconds. At this point, with those double hypos, you want to make sure you're going with your Paladin healer. He should be always going away from the boss and then either left or right, and just follow with him so he'll survive. If he's dead, it's just going to end up making the trial a whole lot harder. And yeah, in phase 3, this long period phase, there's really not much you can do other than just play the mechanics right and survive. We can easily tank that ice storm there, but just make sure you have enough hit points back again for this Annihilate, which we easily do. On a Paladin, we can basically use our Divine Champion without going into the Divine Palisade, the block with the shield, and you'll still be able to block half of the HP and your shield will be increased. And yeah, here we have a spread, and I can literally just tank it looking for the boss, moving accordingly with our Paladin healer and taking the hypo together. And that's, yeah, there is later on in this phase some vital things that you need to do as a solo tank, but other than that it's pretty basic. Just, yeah, survive and tank it as best you can. Make sure you're always giving that combat advantage, because yeah, combat advantage is a massive buff for those DPS. So now we jump on to where Halaster gets to 25% of his HP. Initially he's going to phase, and you'll get, like, depending on what element it is, you'll get all these mechanics. So then you do those mechanics, and then after those mechanics are over, we got a double spread there because of the lightning. Then you'll hear him announcing, once he's hit that 25%, he'll announce, I haven't had a workout like this in ages. And that's when you need to either be north or south on this X. I take that fireball, run all the way to the opposite side of the whirlwind, and get pushed into this fireball. Now that is the most important mechanic for a tank within phase 3. I'm going to go through it again. So we've hit 25%. He announces that I stand here where the fireball is going to be. I let it hit me without reducing my shield, and run all the way to the other side and take the other fireball. Now if you let the first fireball reduce your shield, you'll lose that Gladiator's Guile, and you probably won't be fast enough to get to the other side. Also, it's ideal that you arrange some security. Let's say one person would take the fireball instead of you. At this point here, we have like loads of disintegrates and all the different elements. Ideally, you again give the party combat advantage like I'm doing. You can literally stand within the disintegrate on the opposite side. I have my tab proc, so I'll block half the HP on my shield and half on my HP. The Paladin healer there is giving me a nice shield, and I can make use of that. But when that ice phase comes, ideally just go hide. I accidentally took that disintegrate, because that ice, it can be quite hard to tank that all. If I had my heroism daily, I would have tanked the ice storm there, but I didn't, so we just went and hid. And that's basically it. The DPS will get him down to 10%, and that's your job pretty much complete. Then it's all up to them to make sure they have enough damage now to completely get him down and kill him. All you really want to do is make sure to give that combat advantage when he spawns back in. When he spawns back in, he'll initially look at one place, then turn to you. You want to move to the position where he spawned in facing, and give CA from there, because he will automatically turn back. Anyway, that's basically it then to the DPS check there. and then it's a GG or it's a fail depending on how well your DPS played and how well you managed to keep the aggro from Halaster hitting them. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully this was somewhat helpful for you tanks out there looking to solo tank. I know this is more focused around the Paladin tank, in particular on what powers to use. However, it should be fairly straightforward for whatever tanking class you're playing, as they generally have pretty similar powers. Just make sure to stack all that survivability and also make sure to have enough aggro so you don't lose it. So that'll be it. Hopefully I presented this well. If I did, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing. I want to see you guys around. Goodbye for now.